To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Summary and analysis by Brevreds. Plot summary. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is a riveting tale set in the racially tense southern town of Maycomb, Alabama during the 1930s. Through the innocent eyes of a young girl, Scout Finch, we are introduced to her world, her family, and the values that shape the community around her. Scout, her brother Jem, and their father, Atticus Finch, navigate complex social issues like racism, justice, and moral integrity, while living in a town deeply entrenched in prejudice. Chapter 1: A Summer of Mystery. The story kicks off with Scout reminiscing about how her brother Jem broke his arm. It becomes clear that this story is much bigger than just the Finch family. Scout introduces us to her quirky neighbors, particularly the mysterious recluse, Boo Radley. Boo lives in the run-down Radley house, and the local children, including Scout, Jem, and their friend Dill, are both terrified and fascinated by him. They make up wild stories about Boo, like how he supposedly stabbed his father with scissors and never leaves his house. The trio spends their summer obsessing over Boo, daring each other to get close to the house or even touch the porch. Though most of this chapter feels light-hearted and fun, there's an underlying tone of fear and misunderstanding. The kids are learning, in their own innocent way, that not everything or everyone is what they seem. People can be misunderstood. Key takeaway: curiosity and fear often go hand in hand, but they can also lead to new perspectives. Chapter 2-3: The First Day of School and Prejudice. Scout's excitement for her first day of school quickly fizzles when she clashes with her teacher, Miss Caroline. Scout is already literate, thanks to her father Atticus, who taught her to read, but Miss Caroline reprimands her, saying she's been taught all wrong. Scout realizes that sometimes the world doesn't appreciate things that make you stand out. Then there's the issue of class. When Miss Caroline offers Walter Cunningham money for lunch, Scout steps in to explain that Walter won't accept it because his family is too poor to pay it back. Miss Caroline doesn't understand, and Scout is punished. Later, Scout invites Walter home for lunch, and we see Atticus treat Walter with the same respect he'd show anyone else. Scout's first brush with prejudice here isn't about race, it's about class. Not everyone in Maycomb is treated equally, and the Cunninghams, like many others, are looked down upon for their poverty. Still, Atticus teaches Scout that respect is not something you reserve for people of the same class as you. Key takeaway: everyone deserves respect, regardless of their background or social standing. Chapter 4-6: Boo Radley's Gifts and a Night Sneak. As the summer progresses, strange things start happening. Scout and Jem find small gifts hidden in a knothole in a tree near the Radley house. Coins, gum, carved soap figures, who could be leaving these? The kids suspect it might be Boo Radley, trying to communicate with them. The mystery of Boo starts to change from a terrifying tale to something more human. Maybe Boo isn't so scary after all. One night, the kids sneak over to the Radley house to get a closer look. But when they try to peek in, they hear a shotgun blast. They run away, and Jem loses his pants in the escape. Later that night, Jem returns to retrieve them and finds them neatly folded over the fence, as if someone knew he'd come back. Boo seems less like a boogeyman, and more like a misunderstood figure, maybe even a protector. Key takeaway: people who are misunderstood often have their own story, one that others rarely bother to learn. Chapter 7-8: Winter and Fire. With school back in session, Scout and Jem find more gifts in the knothole, but then, just as mysteriously, the hole is filled with cement. Nathan Radley, Boo's brother, claims he did it to stop the tree from dying, but it feels more like an effort to cut off the children's communication with Boo. Winter arrives, bringing an unexpected snowstorm. Scout and Jem build a snowman that looks suspiciously like a grumpy neighbor, Mr. Avery. But the fun is cut short when Miss Maudie's house catches fire. The whole town pitches in to help her, but amidst the chaos, Scout realizes someone has draped a blanket over her shoulders. She hadn't noticed it happen, but Jem figures out it was Boo Radley. He had been watching and caring all along. Key takeaway: sometimes, kindness comes from the most unexpected places, even from those we fear or misunderstand. Chapter 9-11: Atticus Against the Town. Here's where the story takes a serious turn. Atticus is assigned to defend Tom Robinson, a black man accused of raping a white woman, Mayella Ewell. In the racially divided town of Maycomb, this is a big deal. Atticus knows he's fighting a losing battle, but he takes the case anyway, because he believes in justice and doing what's right, even when everyone else disagrees. Scout starts hearing insults at school like "in our lover," directed at her father. It infuriates her, and she gets into fights to defend Atticus. One day, Atticus tells Scout, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." This becomes one of the most important lessons in the book: empathy, seeing the world through someone else's eyes. Meanwhile, Mrs. Dubose, an old cranky neighbor, insults Atticus at every turn. Jem, frustrated, destroys her flowers in a fit of anger. As punishment, Atticus makes Jem read to her every day. After she dies, Atticus reveals that Mrs. Dubose had been battling a morphine addiction. Reading to her helped her break free from the addiction before she died. She wanted to die beholden to nothing and nobody. Key takeaway: real courage is fighting battles you know you'll lose, but fighting them anyway. Chapter 12 to 14, Calpurnia's World and Family Drama. While Atticus prepares for the trial, Scout and Jem experience another side of Maycomb's community, the Black Church. Calpurnia, the Finch's housekeeper, takes them to her church, and they see firsthand the divide between black and white people in town. The congregation is welcoming, but it's clear they live a very different life from the Finch family. The church members can't even afford hymn books, but they make do by singing hymns from memory. Scout also learns that Calpurnia leads a double life of sorts. At the Finch house, she speaks proper English, but at church, she speaks in the local black dialect. Scout is fascinated by this. It's a reminder that people can live in different worlds depending on where they are and who they're with. Soon after, Scout and Jem's Aunt Alexandra comes to stay with them. She's a proper Southern lady and wants Scout to act more ladylike. Scout, who's a tomboy at heart, hates this. Tensions rise between Scout, her aunt, and even Jem, who's growing up and trying to act more mature. Key takeaway: people are complex, and we often live in different worlds depending on our circumstances. Chapter 15, A Mob and a Man of Integrity. As the trial approaches, the town grows more hostile. A group of men gathers outside the Finch house one night, warning Atticus that Tom Robinson is in danger. Later, Atticus heads to the jail where Tom is being held, knowing there might be trouble. Scout, Jem, and Dill secretly follow him. Sure enough, a mob arrives at the jail, intent on lynching Tom. It's a tense moment, with the mob ready to attack. But then Scout steps forward, recognizing Mr. Cunningham, one of the men in the mob. She starts talking to him, asking about his son and reminding him of the kindness Atticus had shown him. Her innocent conversation diffuses the situation, and the mob disperses. This scene shows how human connection, even in the smallest form, can break down hate. Key takeaway: even in moments of great hatred, empathy and understanding can change hearts. Chapter 16-18, The Trial Begins. Two Worlds Collide. The trial is the heart of the book, where all the underlying themes of racism, justice, and morality come to a head. The courtroom is packed, and despite being children, Scout, Jem, and Dill manage to sneak in and watch from the segregated balcony with the black community. They get to see Atticus in action, defending Tom Robinson with everything he's got. Mayella Ewell, the supposed victim, takes the stand. It's clear she comes from a poor and broken home, and her father, Bob Ewell, is abusive. Mayella's testimony is shaky, full of inconsistencies, and under Atticus's questioning, it becomes obvious that Tom Robinson didn't harm her. In fact, Tom's left arm is crippled, making it impossible for him to have caused her injuries. Key takeaway: sometimes the truth is right in front of us, but prejudice blinds us from seeing it. Chapter 19-21, Tom Robinson takes the stand. Tom Robinson's testimony reveals the truth. Mayella had been the one to make advances on him. Tom, feeling sorry for her, had tried to help her with chores. But when Mayella's father, Bob Ewell, saw them together, he beat her and concocted the story of rape to cover it up. Tom's only crime was being a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. Atticus makes a compelling case, pointing out the lack of evidence and the contradictions in the Ewell's stories. But when the jury delivers the verdict, they find Tom guilty. The courtroom is silent, but the message is loud and clear. In Maycomb, justice is often determined by the color of your skin, not the facts. The black community stands as Atticus leaves the courtroom, a silent gesture of respect for the man who fought for Tom's life. even though the fight was rigged from the start. Key takeaway: justice doesn't always prevail, especially when prejudice stands in its way. Chapter 22 to 23, The Aftermath and a Threat. The trial may be over, but its impact lingers. Jem is devastated by the outcome. He had believed that justice would win, and now he's grappling with the harsh reality of the world. Even though Tom is in prison awaiting an appeal, there's a sense of hopelessness. Atticus tries to console Jem, explaining that change comes slowly, but Jem isn't convinced. Meanwhile, Bob Ewell, furious that Atticus exposed the truth, spits in Atticus's face and threatens him. Atticus doesn't react, saying he's too old to fight, but the threat hangs in the air, a reminder that the battle isn't over. Key takeaway: sometimes, standing up for what's right puts you in danger, but that doesn't mean you should back down. Chapter 24 to 25, A Heartbreaking Death. Tom Robinson's fate takes a tragic turn when he tries to escape from prison and is shot dead. His death hits the town hard, but for many, it's just another sad, inevitable event in a world where black men rarely get a fair shot at life. To Atticus, it's a painful reminder of the injustice he fought so hard against, but couldn't overcome. Scout reflects on how senseless Tom's death was, much like the killing of a mockingbird, a symbol of innocence. Mockingbirds don't harm anyone, they only sing. Killing one is senseless and cruel, much like what happened to Tom. Key takeaway: innocence and goodness are often the first casualties in a world filled with prejudice. Chapter 26 to 27, Growing Up and Unresolved Tensions. Life goes on in Maycomb, but Scout and Jem have been changed forever by the trial. Scout starts to notice the hypocrisy of the adults around her. Her teacher talks about how terrible Hitler is for persecuting people, yet turns around and expresses racist views about black people in her own town. Scout can't wrap her head around how people can hold such contradictory beliefs. Meanwhile, Bob Ewell continues to make threats. He's angry and bitter, looking for someone to blame for his disgrace in the trial. Key takeaway: hypocrisy and ignorance often go hand in hand, especially when people refuse to confront their own prejudices. Chapter 28 to 31, A Night of Terror and the True Face of Courage. The final chapters of the book deliver one of the most intense and climactic moments in the story. One night, after a school pageant, Scout and Jem are walking home when they're attacked by Bob Ewell. In the dark chaos, Scout is helpless, trapped inside her ham costume, while Jem fights back but is overpowered. Just when it seems like Ewell might kill them, someone intervenes: Boo Radley. Boo saves the children, killing Bob Ewell in the process. Scout finally gets to meet the man she's been so curious about for years, and she realizes that Boo isn't scary at all. He's shy, gentle, and has been watching over them all along, protecting them in his own way. Sheriff Heck Tate decides to cover up Boo's role in Ewell's death, claiming that Ewell fell on his own knife. He believes dragging Boo into the spotlight would be cruel, likening it to killing a mockingbird. It's a poignant moment, bringing the book's central metaphor full circle. In the final scene, Scout walks Boo home and stands on his porch, seeing the world from his perspective. It's a powerful reminder of the lesson Atticus taught her: to truly understand someone, you must walk in their shoes. Key takeaway: true courage isn't always about fighting, it's about protecting what's right, even if no one ever knows. Analysis. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is a rich and complex novel that addresses important themes like racial injustice, moral growth, and the loss of innocence. These ideas make it an essential book for 10th grade discussions, as it prompts students to reflect on social issues that remain relevant today. Below is an analysis that covers the novel's themes, characters, and symbols, which are crucial for deepening classroom discussions. Key themes. 1. Racial injustice. One of the central themes in To Kill a Mockingbird is racial injustice, a stark reality in 1930s Alabama. The trial of Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of raping Mayella Ewell, is the most glaring example of how deeply rooted racism is in Maycomb. Even though Atticus Finch presents overwhelming evidence of Tom's innocence, the jury convicts him solely because of his race. This trial offers a window into the systemic racism of the time, where black people were automatically considered guilty, regardless of the truth. The novel challenges readers to think about the concept of justice and whether it can exist in a society so divided by racial lines. Discussions in the classroom can focus on how Tom Robinson's trial mirrors real-life cases of racial injustice, both in the past and today. Discussion points. How does the trial of Tom Robinson reflect the broader racial tensions in Maycomb? In what ways does Harper Lee expose the flaws in the legal system through this trial? Are there modern parallels to the racial injustice depicted in the novel? 2. Moral growth and integrity. Scout Finch, the novel's protagonist, undergoes significant moral growth. At the beginning, Scout is a naive child, unaware of the complexities of human nature and the moral struggles that come with growing up. Over time, through her experiences with racism, classism, and empathy, Scout learns to see the world more clearly. She gains a deeper understanding of what it means to do the right thing, even when it's unpopular or dangerous, as seen through the actions of her father, Atticus. Atticus Finch represents moral integrity throughout the novel. His decision to defend Tom Robinson, knowing that it will bring scorn and danger to his family, demonstrates his unwavering belief in justice and equality. He teaches his children valuable lessons about empathy, respect, and standing up for what's right, even when it means standing alone. Discussion points. How does Scout's view of the world change from the beginning to the end of the novel? What lessons does Atticus teach Scout and Jem about moral integrity? Why is it important to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult? 3. Loss of innocence. The theme of losing innocence is closely tied to the Finch children's journey in the novel. Scout and Jem start the story with a childlike view of the world, believing in fairness and goodness. However, the trial of Tom Robinson shatters this illusion, especially for Jem, who struggles to reconcile the guilty verdict with his belief in justice. This loss of innocence reflects a painful but necessary part of growing up, realizing that the world is often unjust and flawed. Boo Radley, who is initially a figure of fear and mystery for the children, also plays a role in their journey toward understanding. By the end of the novel, Scout sees Boo not as a monster but as a kind, misunderstood man. This change in perception symbolizes Scout's growing awareness of how appearances can be deceiving and how people are often judged unfairly. Discussion points. How do Scout and Jem lose their innocence throughout the story? How does Boo Radley's character contribute to the theme of lost innocence? What are some key moments in the novel that show the children's growing understanding of the world's complexities? Important characters. 1. Atticus Finch. Atticus is the moral backbone of the novel. His calm demeanor, intelligence, and empathy make him a figure of wisdom and integrity. He doesn't just talk about justice and equality. He lives by these principles, even when they put him at odds with his community. He's a model of what it means to be a good parent, a good lawyer, and a good human being. Atticus is often described as a hero in the novel, not because he wins every battle, but because he fights for justice in a deeply flawed society. His approach to parenting is also notable. He teaches his children to think critically, to empathize with others, and to stand up for what's right, all of which are central to the novel's moral message. Discussion points. What makes Atticus a model of moral integrity in the novel? Why does Atticus choose to defend Tom Robinson, knowing it's a losing battle? How does Atticus's parenting style influence Scout and Jem's moral development? Scout Finch. Scout is both the narrator and the protagonist of the story. Through her eyes, we experience the events of the novel, and her voice is a unique blend of childhood innocence and adult reflection. Scout is curious, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge societal norms, especially those related to gender and race. As the novel progresses, she learns difficult lessons about justice, empathy, and human complexity. Scout's journey is one of self-discovery and growth. As she faces the realities of racism and inequality, she begins to see the world differently. Her relationship with Boo Radley in particular represents her shift from fear and misunderstanding to empathy and acceptance. Discussion points. How does Scout's perception of Boo Radley change throughout the novel? What role does Scout's innocence play in highlighting the prejudice in Maycomb? In what ways does Scout challenge societal expectations, especially regarding gender? 3. Jem Finch. Jem, Scout's older brother, experiences a significant transformation throughout the novel. At the beginning, he is still a child, but as the story progresses, he becomes more aware of the harsh realities of the world. The trial of Tom Robinson deeply affects Jem, and the guilty verdict shakes his belief in justice and fairness. He struggles to come to terms with the fact that the world isn't as just as he once thought. Jem's loss of innocence mirrors the broader theme of the novel, coming to terms with the complexities of human nature and society. His emotional response to the trial also highlights the difference between childhood idealism and adult cynicism. Discussion points. How does the trial of Tom Robinson impact Jem's view of the world? What is the significance of Jem's growing understanding of the moral complexities around him? How does Jem's journey differ from Scout's? 4. Boo Radley. Boo Radley is one of the novel's most mysterious and misunderstood characters. At first, he is seen through the eyes of Scout, Jem, and Dill as a frightening figure, a source of childhood myths and fears. However, as the story unfolds, Boo becomes a symbol of goodness and protection. By the end of the novel, Boo's true nature is revealed when he saves Scout and Jem from Bob Yule's attack. Boo's character represents the idea that people are often misunderstood based on appearances or rumors. He is a symbol of the Mockingbird, an innocent who has been harmed by society's judgment and isolation. Discussion points. How does Boo Radley's character challenge the children's initial perceptions of him? Why is Boo Radley considered a mockingbird in the novel? What does Boo's final act of protecting the children signify in the story? 5. Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson is the catalyst for the novel's central conflict. His trial serves as a vehicle for the exploration of racial injustice, as well as a critique of the American legal system. Despite being a kind and hardworking man, Tom is doomed from the start because of his race. His conviction and eventual death symbolize the deep-rooted racism of Maycomb and society at large. Tom's character also highlights the vulnerability of black men in the South during this time period. He is portrayed as an innocent man, caught in a system designed to oppress him, making him another mockingbird figure in the novel. Discussion points. How does Tom Robinson's trial reflect the theme of racial injustice in the novel? Why is Tom considered a mockingbird, and what does his fate reveal about the society in which he lives? What impact does Tom's death have on the characters and the town of Maycomb? Symbols and motifs. 1. The mockingbird. The symbol of the mockingbird is perhaps the most important in the novel. Atticus tells Scout and Jem that it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because they don't do anything but make music for people to enjoy. In the novel, the mockingbird symbolizes innocence and goodness, particularly in characters like Tom Robinson and Boo Radley, who are judged and harmed by society despite their innocence. The idea of the mockingbird ties into the broader themes of the novel, the destruction of innocence and the impact of prejudice. Killing a mockingbird represents the senseless destruction of good, innocent people by a cruel society. Discussion points. How does the symbol of the mockingbird relate to Tom Robinson and Boo Radley? What does the mockingbird reveal about the novel's view on justice and morality? Why is it significant that Atticus teaches his children about the mockingbird? 2. The Radley House. The Radley House symbolizes fear of the unknown and societal judgment. At the beginning of the novel, it's a source of mystery and fear for Scout, Jem, and Dill. They invent stories about Boo Radley based on rumors and their own imaginations. But as they grow and learn more about Boo's true nature, the Radley House becomes less frightening and more a symbol of how society marginalizes those who don't conform. Discussion points. How does the children's perception of the Radley House change over time? What does the Radley House represent in terms of societal judgment and fear of the unknown? In what ways is the Radley House symbolic of Maycomb's treatment of outsiders? 3. The courtroom. The courtroom in To Kill a Mockingbird is symbolic of justice, but also its failures. While the courtroom should be a place where truth and fairness prevail, Tom Robinson's trial demonstrates the extent to which prejudice can corrupt the justice system. The courtroom scenes reveal how deep-seated racism can influence the decisions of even those who are supposed to be impartial. Discussion points. What does the courtroom symbolize in the novel? How does Tom Robinson's trial expose the flaws in the justice system? In what ways does the courtroom serve as a battleground for Maycomb's racial tensions? Final thoughts. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird offers rich material for classroom discussions on themes of morality, justice, racism, and the complexities of human nature. By exploring the characters' growth, the symbolic elements of the story, and the novel's social commentary, students can engage in meaningful conversations about how these issues resonate today. Whether examining the lessons learned by Scout and Jem, or the moral dilemmas faced by Atticus, To Kill a Mockingbird, remains a powerful novel for understanding the challenges of standing up for what's right in an imperfect world. Thank you for completing another Brevred video. Like and subscribe to see more of our videos. If you have a particular book that you would like us to summarize, please share it in the comments section.